Here on the channel, someone had made some requests on the Aprilia Tuareg to make a comparison between running up through the gears with or without the quick shifter. So one using my hand to actually shift up through gears, and one actually just using the quick shifter, which is installed on this motorcycle. This is the quick shifter that's available from Aprilia. In order to have this installed, you do have to have them plug it into their laptop and essentially turn it on, and then adjust it to essentially cut out the ignition as appropriate when you're putting the right amount of pressure on the shifter. So that can be fine-tuned a little bit with just the length of the linkage there. So how this works essentially is as you press up or press down, so I'm gonna pull down here and you can see the plunger extend, and that's going to send one type of signal to the ECU on the motorcycle, and if I pull up, it's going to depress that plunger into this body right here, and it's going to send a different type of signal to the ECU. So for upshifts, it's basically killing out the ignition for just a moment so that the engine essentially stalls for a split second to keep the bike or the motor from running away between two gears. So when you're shifting from, say, first to second, that brief time from first to second, if you weren't using a quick shift mechanism, essentially the issue would be that the RPMs would no longer match as it was going up through its next gear. So then on the way down, what this does is it bumps up the RPM to basically rev match as you're downshifting. So the downshifting does work great, as well as the upshifts, but I think most people are interested in the upshifts, so that's what I made videos of today. One thing I have said in a previous video on this mechanism, because this plunger coming up and down, it's just one more moving piece in the shifter linkage. It does affect your ability to find neutral when you're at a stoplight on this. It's not impossible by any means, but I would say this was kind of above average on motorcycles for finding neutral before, and putting this quick shift mechanism has kind of put it more on the average range in terms of finding neutral. So not a big deal. I certainly think that it's worth having it on there, but just something to note if you're going to put it on your motorcycle. So when I went out on my ride, the temperature conditions were approximately 68 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 19 degrees Celsius, I believe. And I'm sitting at about 6,700 feet in elevation above sea level. I'll let you guys do the conversion there to meters if you're international. But essentially what I found was that in trying to give myself a nice level elevation with equal wind conditions and equal temperatures and all these things, to give myself essentially the best apples to apples comparison so that I could actually time it from the time that I say go on the video to the time I hit 80 miles per hour on the speedometer. So I'm starting at 20 miles per hour and I'm timing it to 80 miles an hour. So as you'll see in the beginning of the videos, I'm counting down from 3, and on the word go, I'm running it up through each gear until the shift light flashes up here in the top of the display. And I'm either using you can see my hand moving either for the clutch, or you'll see the absence of movement here in my hand for the shifter. Now keep in mind for this one, this is a little bit shorter pull, so I have a little bit better, maybe a little bit quicker shift than the stock shift lever, because I do have an adjustable pull, so I was able to make the pull a little bit shorter in here just for the purposes. Normally I run it out quite a bit longer. That makes it easier when to find neutral, like say at a stoplight. But for the purpose of this test, I reduced the throw just a little bit to reduce the length of time it would take me to actually shift through. So, and the video that I'm going to include of me shifting with the clutch on this one is actually one of the, I would say, more average or it may be even slightly below average videos where I'm not, what it would sound like if I'm normally running through a set of gears. And you'll notice a significant delay over the quick shifter going from first to second. And what I didn't include in these videos is me actually missing second because I'm trying to run through the gears so fast. So the reason why I included that video is just to kind of show you the dramatic difference of how much easier it is to go from first to second. I think that's the biggest gain that you see as I'm going up through the gears. So anyway, without further ado,
Three, two, one, go! 3, 2, 1, go!
well, there you have it. It's about a half to 3/4 of a second difference. So I would say that most of the time I was averaging somewhere closer to between a half and 3/4 of a second. So probably about like 0.6 seconds difference. The video I showed you was 0.74 seconds, I believe the difference was there. So something to note about that is that I was trying really hard to run through the gears quickly while using the clutch. Without the clutch, it was just very easy for me to do so. So just the amount of effort in order to produce consistent results, much easier with the quick shifter than without. There's something else though that I would find particularly useful for the quick shifter, and that has to go with that, once again, where I've talked about going from first to second gear, that place where you can essentially miss second gear sometimes, and where this makes it particularly difficult to miss second gear by using the quick shifter. And that would be, for instance, if you're going through like deep sand, mud, or any kind of hill climb, which I've actually experienced this before, where I've got the bike loaded down and I'm trying to keep the revs maxed out in first gear, going into second gear and keeping up my momentum. And just that very split second of delay that using the clutch can cost me while going up a hill while fully loaded, like on a very long hill climb. That can be the difference between my engine getting bogged down and then having to potentially feather the clutch in order to get the revs back up. So for that reason, I find that it's particularly useful also just for being up on the pegs and being able to simply just grab a gear real quick while still maintaining a very good grip on my handlebars, which is obviously much easier when you're not having to modulate the clutch lever. So anyway, thanks for watching. Cheers.